Morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're watching me from. Today, I want us to talk about something called cast under trigonometry. So what is cast and what do you mean by cast? That is what I want us to talk about. I want us to represent 30 degrees. Let's represent 30 degrees, the first quadrant, so that at that point here, I'll have my 30 degrees there. So we can talk about sine 30 degrees. You can talk about cos 30 degrees. You can talk about tan 30 degrees. So sin 30 degrees is going to give me 0.5. Cos 30 degrees is going to give me 0.866. And then tan 30 degrees is going to give me 0.577. So now I want us to represent 30 degrees, the second quadrant, whereby I'm going to pay attention to the x-axis. I'm going to pay attention to the x-axis, which is the primary axis and also the real axis, whereby then I'm going to have 30 degrees at that point. It's the primary axis, is also the real axis. Of course, then the y-axis, you also refer to it as the imaginary axis. So that 30 degrees in the second quadrant. Now from the zero mark, we can talk about 150 degrees. So that in the second quadrant, I'll be talking about sine 150. I'll be talking about cos 150 and tan 150. So sine 150 degrees is going to give me 0.5. Cos 150 degrees is going to give me negative 0.866, and then I'm going to get negative 0.577. I want us now to talk about 30 degrees in the third quadrant. So in the third quadrant, I'll talk about 30 degrees here. My 30 degrees will be there. So that then representing 30 degrees, the third quadrant, I'll talk about now from the zero mark, I'll have my 30 degrees at that point. So this is going to be 180. Of course, then you have 180 here, plus 30 to give me 210 degrees. So that in the third quadrant, I'll be talking about sine. I'll be talking about cos 210. Then I'll be talking about tan 210. Sine 210 is going to give me negative 0.5. Cos 210 is going to give me negative 0.866. Tan 210 is going to give me a positive 0.577. Now, I want us now to represent 30 degrees in the fourth quadrant. So that I'll talk about 30 degrees here. I'll have my 30 degrees at that point. So now, representing 30 degrees from the zero mark, I'm going to start at this point. And then all this. The whole of that angle will be 360 degrees. I subtract 30 degrees to give me 330. So I'll have 330 degrees as the whole of that angle. So now, representing now 30 degrees in the fourth quadrant, this is going to be 330. So I'll talk about sine 330 degrees, cos 330, then tan 330. So that sine 330 is going to be negative 0.5, cos 330 is 0.866. 0.866. So that then tan 330 is equals to 0.7577, and of course tan is negative. So looking at these figures, I can see that in the first quadrant, this being my first quadrant, this being my second quadrant, and this being my third quadrant, and this one being my fourth quadrant. So we can see that in the first quadrant, I have all angles positive. In the second quadrant, I can see that sine is positive. In the third quadrant, I can see that only tan was positive. And in the fourth quadrant, I can see that only cos was positive. So we can talk about all angles in the first quadrant being positive, sine being positive in the second quadrant. In the third quadrant, I only have tan positive, and in the fourth quadrant, I only have cos positive. And this gives me the word cast. Reading from here, we have C-A-S-T, cast. You can also talk about acts. For those of you who are Christians, you can also talk about acts. So now, act is A, C, T, and F. Find beta when sine beta is equals to, let's talk about sine beta being equal to 0.867. So that then beta, when sine beta is equal to 0.867. So when sine beta is equal to 0.867, this means that my beta will be equal to sine inverse 0.867, whereby I'm going to get my beta to be equal to 60 degrees. So remember that I have a 60 degrees. This 60 degrees is in the first quadrant, because here all angles are positive. All angles are positive. All trigonometric ratios are positive in the first quadrant. Then we can also have 60 degrees in another quadrant. We can also have 60 degrees in another quadrant, and that quadrant is the second quadrant. Why? Because if we represent the 60 degrees in the second quadrant, whereby then we will be talking about 60 degrees at this point. We'll be talking about 60 degrees at this point. So that then I'll have 60 from here. I'll have 60 degrees at that point. This point then, from the 0 mark, I'll talk about 180 degrees minus 60 degrees to give me 120 degrees. And this means that sine 120 degrees will also give me 0.867. You can prove this from your calculator. You can also prove this from your calculator. Now, question of the day. So give me the two values of beta. Give me the two values of beta, that point. So thank you for